Well, warm greetings, brothers and sisters in freedom around the world. This is Mark Emery. I'm the founder of the National Action Task Force, and we're really about ready to start ramping things up in a big way in the NATF. And I want to start by sharing with you today a very important topic involving a conversation that I had with one of our members. And the topic is the abominations of indoctrination. In other words, how to deal with the school boards that are trying to shove indoctrination down the throat of our kids and to be completely unaccountable in doing so. All right. So we've got some interesting information I'm sure you're going to find quite useful, and if not entertaining, about some actual experiences that one of our members had. And to really kind of set the stage to create the context here, let me read for you some excerpts from an article that I found in the Republic Broadcasting Network at republicbroadcasting.org. I love their tagline on their website. It's because you can handle the truth. I like that. So this is an article they put out, School Boards versus American Parents. All right. Remember when school boards actually represented the communities they served? All right. Recently, you probably heard about the National School Boards Association, who had successfully petitioned the Federal Justice Department to sic the FBI on the parents because the parents didn't like the far left crazy curriculum they're serving up to them. All right, poisoning the children's minds. So now parents are pushing back, and vigorously, because they have to. They absolutely have to. They've branded us, the parents, domestic terrorists because we don't want critical race theory forced down our children's throats, to say nothing of their obsession with promoting transgenderism. Talk about ungodly practices. All right. The parents have been accused of all sorts of threats, issuing all sorts of threats, not one of which has ever been carried out. And hate, always hate. It's hate. Disagreement is hate now. All right. You see how they use words to try and stifle dialogue. All right. But it looks more like the school boards are the ones who hate the parents, hate our country, and are trying to turn it into something else. God knows what. And for this, the FBI has been directed to investigate parents who dare dissent from the curriculum as if that were a crime. All right. Now, naturally, as you know, there's been quite a bit of pushback on that unconstitutional behavior from the DOJ, and that has settled down thanks to people like you and others who have stood up and decried that just ungodly action. All right. So let's look a little bit at what the school boards have done. They violate open public meetings laws by making unannounced changes in the location of their meetings, or not following the rules, or not posting when the meetings are in appropriate places, publishing their meetings. They hold secret discussions by means of text messages, which is a violation of law in many states. They restrict public access to the meetings. They limit discussion. They don't answer questions. They charge ridiculously high fees to anyone who wants to view public records and curriculum materials. And they waste boxcar loads of our money, our tax dollars, on toxic, useless, garbage instruction in diversity, equity, systemic racism, and other woke doctrines. And the U.S. Attorney General, who unleashed the FBI on the parents, guess what? Has a daughter who works for Panorama Education. You'll never guess what they do. They provide these far-left curriculum materials. But other than that, nothing to complain about. Right. Okay, so and the article goes on. Um, we don't want hypocritical race theory, it's poison. We don't want transgender propaganda. Some school boards have tried to convince the public that no, heck no, they're not teaching CRT. But at the same time, the far left teachers unions have been doubling down on CRT. We'll teach it whether you like it or not. Shut up and pay. In fact, there was a national article just came out last week, early November, that basically said where the teachers' unions are telling the parents, we know better what to teach your children than you do. And so they're claiming ownership of the kids. That's basically the bottom line. And we'll get into more of that as we go. All right. So, having said that, I've invited one of our more active and engaged members, Keith, from Minnesota. He's been very active in the Minnesota, various regions throughout Minnesota. He's traveling around trying to teach parents the rules of the road as far as these meetings go, as far as open meetings laws are concerned, and to show them really different ways, means, and methods of holding these school boards accountable. Okay, just like the teachers' unions don't think the parents have any right to have any say in their children's education, these school boards, who were created to serve the community, don't think they're accountable to the community, and they hold the community in contempt for simply trying to express themselves. And you've seen that. If you haven't, you will shortly. So let me introduce Keith from Minnesota. He is a prime, for lack of a better term, let's just call him a teacher. He's done a number of investigations. He's politically active, helping people to learn how to get engaged in the political process and step in and fill the void for common sense, right? And that's part of our responsibility, is to take responsibility for what's going on around us. And if we don't like what we see, we have to get involved ourselves. All right. So, hello, Keith. Very glad to have the opportunity to share some of your experiences with folks out there that might have an interest. I want to especially thank you for your commitment to good government and making things happen. The whole idea is one person can have an impact. And
Absolutely.
where are you? That's the question. Where are you? Where are you having an impact? Talking to our viewers here. So Keith, when did you start pick up the ball and start going to some of these meetings?
Mark, first I want to thank you for the opportunity. As you know, I've traveled a lot of the state. When did I start going? Probably about 2 years ago, when one of my granddaughters was 1, and I realized what's going on in our school boards. And then I asked what's going on in our school boards. Then I got lied to about what's going on with our school boards. And then I started doing research about what was going on in our school boards, because that's my background as a real detective. And I was unpleasantly surprised that I was correct, if that makes any sense to you.
No, sure.
About 2 years ago, I started really getting plugged in through the conservative patriot movement to parents and small parent startup groups, or the desire to start a parent group, because they just couldn't get any answers from their school board. They couldn't get any feedback. They couldn't get any answers. Heck, they couldn't ask any questions. They couldn't bring a banner in. You had to sign up and leave your name, address, phone number, et cetera, et cetera. A complete shutdown of not only your God-given rights and constitutionally protected rights, but also a complete shutdown of even the redress of grievances. So I'm going on, we're just about to start year 3 right now as we speak.
So the school boards, the whole purpose and intent is to serve the community, and yet they don't want to hear from the community. Sounds like.
Well, the school boards or the Department of Education, for those that like to call themselves that, have two big lies going on right now. One is, Mark, they all use the initials ISD, at least in Minnesota, before their number that they're assigned. ISD 458 stands for Independent School District, and that's the first lie. Through EDMN, or Education Minnesota, and the Minnesota School Board Association, I've learned and now proven that these Twin Cities Metro gurus create policy, assign them a policy number. They have a whole series of numbers that are all assigned to different areas. And then they just issue these policies. And yes, there is some independence as to whether or not your local school board wants to adopt them. But the verbiage of them, all of that is done in the Twin Cities by people who have never walked in the doors of your school or your school grounds or your school facility, met with your administration, or certainly not teachers, and certainly or visit your community. So that's the first big lie that I discovered. The second big lie I discovered is that we think we own our children. Now, don't yell at me yet. We really do. We just haven't taken ownership. The big lie is that we have allowed the school district, the school board, the school administration, and the teachers to believe that they own our children. Used to be while they were in school. Now I think they think that they own our children all the time. So those are the two big lies that really were the rallying cry to me, or growing up in 4-H riding horses. That was the burr under the saddle that made the buck start.
Man, oh man. And to me, being a man of faith, I just recognize that as the tip of the spear in Satan's plan to destroy the family, turn the kids against the parents.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely, Mark. We did it with some of our pagan holidays. We've done it with allowing ourselves to have 2.5 working jobs in the family, which means for the most part, mom works full time, dad works full time, and somebody else out of those two works another part-time job. So, the family meal is basically gone, where we sit at the table, which is where we get to ask our children questions about their day, or their relationships, or their team, or their teacher, or what they're learning. And it's it's become a problem, and that's where a lot of it eroded away.
Yeah, breakdown of the family. It's right at the heart of it. So
yeah, really.
And the family is the core central unit of government, right? That's where government starts.
Yeah,
we govern our families, and we govern our communities, and we work outward from there. And without that, the fabric of society just completely breaks down. So for you folks out there who don't have kids in public school, this is a matter that affects everybody. It affects the entire society at all levels. And so that's why everyone should be concerned about this. So it's just appalling, really. So where do you want to start? Tell us about some of your experiences and maybe reactions you've gotten in some of the meetings. I know you've had a few particular experiences that got some interesting results, to say the least. And
I'll say this. I'll start with this: is that I'm not anyone special, and those that know me will say, "Oh, well, you think you are, or you act like you are." There's a time when you have to have that confidence. There's a time when you have to take on that moniker or wear that hat, be the authoritarian, or be the person that's maybe speaking out more than someone else. But I'm not anyone special. I just have a certain number of gifts that I'm able to plug into the overall problem. And the only way we're going to be successful is if we identify those that have different, unique talents and can put them all together into a package to attack some of these problems. One of my gifts, if you will, or curse, as my mother calls it, is my ability to speak publicly. And I'm not ashamed or afraid or bashful about it. So I may have a mother or grandmother or a father or even a student approach me and say, this is wrong or that's going on, or can you look into this? But then they don't want to be the ones to bring it up in a school board meeting. And sometimes they have a valid reason for that. I've seen athletes, high school athletes, maybe in their senior year, athletes that have lettered, athletes that have a dream or a goal of going on, whether it be get a scholarship through what they do or maybe go on and play pro sports. I've seen athletes threatened. I've seen their families threatened that if they don't sit down and shut up, that's going to go away. Or so and so may not graduate. Or there might be a way to find out, that, oh, you're 1/4 point shy of speaking at commencement or being the valedictorian. So, am I a voice for maybe the silent or the meek? If that's what it is, then I'm okay with that. And that is how I got involved. Just people saying, hey, I don't speak well. I'm not articulate. They won't listen to me because I'm not college educated. And one of my passions, as you know, is to teach other people to be able to be more comfortable speaking in public or writing or doing a seminar or addressing a school board. And that's really where all this started. Is just we can't sit and do nothing and expect somebody else to do everything. If we don't all chip in with the talents and skills we have, identify your strengths, focus on those, but don't ignore your weaknesses. Go grab your weakness and go find somebody that's their strength and pair with them. So, ride side by side with them, if you will, and then take some of that knowledge you get and get better in that area that maybe isn't your strength.
Yeah, and I would add to that, for our parents out there that, parents, you are the one responsible for your family, and you need to do whatever you need to do, whatever needs to be done to protect, encourage, and develop that family the way you see fit. All right. And to sit back and allow others to indoctrinate kids in the wrong way is acquiescence. And I'm sorry, folks, but you're just as guilty as those who are perpetrating it if you sit back silently. So people have to stand up, regardless of what their skill set is. It comes from the heart. It comes from your sense of duty. It comes from your sense, responsibility to God to do whatever you need to do to protect your family. And so I would just add that. So anyway, continue.
Fair enough. So yeah, we started speaking at school boards mostly where somebody else either couldn't speak up or wouldn't speak up or had been speaking up. And it's really the latter for month after month after month. And they get a school board member or even the entire school board or the majority of the school board that does this. Came up with you can't ask any questions. We don't answer any questions. You're limited to 2 minutes of time. You have to sign up in advance. You've got to list your address. You've got to be in the school district. You've got to have children in the school, and all these little rules that they came along with that I've yet to find spelled out in our Constitution or in our Bible. And I approached and I was, oh, well, you're an outsider. Well, I'm an employer and I employ people from this school district. I've had 3 or 4 very successful businesses in my life, and I can't employ somebody in my businesses that graduated high school without the ability to count change back from a $50 bill on a $38 purchase. Wow. So I do have, and that's how I came some of those objections about, well, you're not from here. Well, I pay taxes statewide, and my statewide taxes go to state education, which gets distributed amongst all these independent school districts. So, you can't be shy about it. You can't cow down to a lot of the misinformation that they give when they tell you that you can't speak up.
Yeah, and going back to the original concept of having these boards or districts or whatever they want to be called these days, is that their purpose is to serve the community. All right. And people, we cannot allow them to dictate the rules. They serve you, right? You are the one that needs to set the rules. And if they're not going to engage or converse or give answers or have a conversation, then they need to change. That policy needs to change. And you, mom and dad, or community leader need to enforce and mandate that change. And so that's where your responsibility comes into play.
You're right, Mark, and that's really all this started to be for me is how do we make change? Um, and sure, there's probably illusions of grandeur out there for some people as to what they want changed. We've learned, we teach, we preach baby steps. You've got to start somewhere. The first thing that has to change is attendance, not theirs, ours. And school boards will tell you they've run for years without anybody ever being there unless it's someone invited for an award. And now all of a sudden they got 20, 30, 40, 100 people filling their school board room. And they don't know what to do with that. But it's our fault because while we weren't there, we weren't watching under the cloak of darkness, if you will. They decided that they were fully in control and had all the power and all the authority to do anything. And there was nobody there to counter them. So attendance is first. And attendance is a must and it has to be consistent. Not everybody can make it all the time, but if you've got a group, you've got to have representatives at each and every school board meeting. And then we found out there's a lot of work done before the school board meeting in what they call work groups. In Minnesota, anyway, our school board meetings are an open meeting. They're required by law to follow the open meeting laws. And so are the work groups. The difference is in a school board meeting, we actually do have the right to speak out and speak up. In a work group, we can't talk, but we can be there. And what we found is in the work groups or the work study groups or the meeting before the meeting, that's where they do all their dirty work. That's where they get everything done. That's where they most often in private, although it's open to the public, that's where they make their decisions. And what we're seeing when we go to the school board meeting is the lights are on, the cameras are rolling. It's the dog and pony show to act like that's the meeting when almost everything's already been decided.
Yeah, that's scary. And so if you're not in those work groups or someone, is not there representing you, then you have no idea really how to deal with that, in the public meetings.
Right. And to hold them accountable, Mark, instead of just being there, but to hold them accountable, I always bring one of my best friends. This is my little tablet. It's very thin. It doesn't, and I can sit and act like I'm typing or taking a note or two, but what I'm really doing is recording, which is perfectly legal in Minnesota. If one part of a conversation knows that it's being recorded, or if it is a public meeting, or if you are a elected public servant, I have the right to record any conversation like that. So if I can, I'll do audio video recording. I always sit close enough where I can hear because they're real good about turning the microphones off, boy. If they don't want whatever you've got to say out to the public, they turn that volume down. But I record everything because of accountability. And if I record in a work study group that somebody has said this, or they're going to do this, or going to go vote that way, but then in the city council or the school board meeting or city council meeting, they do something differently. Now I can hold them accountable or at least bring into question that they said they were going to do one thing, yet they did another. And that is absolutely critical no matter what board we're looking at. County board, state legislature, school board, city council, it doesn't matter. If we don't have it documented that they said it, you might as well just say that they didn't say it. And if you have it, now you can hold them accountable or at least make them answer to their change.
Okay. Now, a minute ago, you mentioned rules for public meetings. Let's expand on that. That's something that is written basically into law, right? Public meetings have a prescribed procedure, prescribed
Absolutely.
by law, and people, and that's on a statewide basis, right? All public meetings.
Yes, it is. Yep.
Okay.
And I know my good friend, Mr. Michael Lenz, would probably argue the point with me because in Minnesota, we've proven in most courts, we don't have law in Minnesota. Well, unless it's for them, unless they want it. We have laws that are just completely ignored all the way up into the courtroom, as you know. But when you start calling things to their attention and you start putting them on notice, sometimes verbally, sometimes in writing, that they're breaking statutes, ordinances, U.S. codes and what the repercussions are. That's when we started seeing a shift in the school boards paying a little more attention and being a little more concerned about who was in the audience and who was a guest speaker tonight, and where that was going to end up being, because a lot of them broadcast their own school board meeting or city council meeting on their little cable TV channel, or now even on the internet. But some of them have some real sneaky ways about how to not broadcast parental input or grandparents input or student input. So that's another reason we started recording, is if you're going to show part of a school board meeting and not all of it, or if you're going to play little tricks to turn off the microphone when someone's speaking during public comment, we're going to go air our video right after you and elsewhere and promote the living snot out of it and get the word out as to what really happened.
So folks need to look up the rules on public meetings in their state and be aware of what those are, and not be buffaloed into doing things that are otherwise, restricted or forbidden or not allowed according to the rules. And
so, Mark, let's just share a couple of those in Minnesota that we found, some of which we've got corrected, some of which we haven't. For example, in a school district, you have to publish your meetings at least a certain number of days. I don't want to quote my quote without having it in my head. I want to say it has to be published in your official publication of record at least 5 days before the meeting. Well, we found school boards in Southeast Minnesota that were putting the school board meeting notice up on the bulletin board right outside the principal's office. Well, that's not publishing it. So then we went back in their own school board notes and found in their annual filing that their official record of publication is the Lewiston newspaper. So we contacted the Lewiston newspaper and said, "Are you putting in the school board meeting?" "Oh, we haven't had anything from the school or school board in over 2 years." And that's the law. And what we found most often with them in researching their own policies, which are usually online or which you can get through a Data Practice Act request or FOIA request if you're in other states, you can use their own language, their own rules, their own policies, their own procedures. They don't know them, and they openly admit and tell you that. When you cite that and say, "Well, according to your policy 21.4, you didn't notify people of this," or "you made a vote on a resolution within your school board or your city council without," and this is a law here, "without having 2 public readings of your resolution in succession." In other words, 2 meetings in a row. They have to read that to the public and read it out loud before they can just pass that resolution. And we found school boards and city councils and county boards all over the state of Minnesota that aren't abiding by that. But if we, the people, the true police of our government, us, and I don't care what sideways remark you want to make about that, the "we the people" police movement is a lot more constitutional than the oath-carrying officers wearing the badge and the gun. If we don't hold them accountable to that, then it's our fault.
Well, and
it's our fault because
we have
we definitely have.
That's years, and this is why they feel they can get away with doing whatever the heck they want. This is why they don't know their own rules. They don't know their own policies, because no one's ever held them to account.
Exactly.
Mark,
we had a
go ahead.
I have an old Baptist preacher that used, one of the best sermons he ever taught, in my opinion, was that the sin of omission becomes the sin of commission.
Yeah.
If we just omit it, if we let them omit it, if we let them get away with it, now we're complacent. We allowed that, so now we're guilty of that sin as well. And that's exactly what's going on with school boards and city councils and county boards all across the land.
Yeah, it's the same across the board in all forms of government,
It truly.
Yeah, I mean, police actions and other government agencies, they step far beyond their scope of authority. Why? Because no one ever challenges, no one ever draws the line, no one ever says no, So, and that's from ignorance, people need to get involved, get engaged, learn some of these things. This is pretty simple stuff, it does take a little bit of study, and it's actually kind of fun to do, collaborating with other folks, get a little team together, go out for a coffee and swap notes and talk about these things and educate each other on what you found. So, in fact, that's how I started the Lighthouse Law Club, just a bunch of folks taking interest in taxes and how they were being misapplied or police stops and what do we do when they say this or give orders for that? Well, know your rights, know where to draw the line. If you don't know that in advance, you'll get taken advantage of. That's what happens.
Mark, as you know, we had a school board that I was called to, and it was several hundred miles away from my residence. And the parent group there was very strong. Overall, they had a parent group of 200 or 300 people on their mailing list, but regularly in their parent group meetings, they were easily approaching numbers of 50, 60, 70 people in attendance here in northern Minnesota. And they'd been asking the school board questions about COVID and the COVID money and this furry craze that's going on. And they've been asking month after month after month, couldn't get anywhere. And asked me if I'd come speak to them, if I'd come address them, which I did. And I did so in kind of a covert manner. I didn't really let them know who I was until the very end of it. And I had a prepared written message to send to them loud and clear. And that's one thing I will encourage you on. The more you can write out what you're going to say or want to say, even if it's in bullet points, go through it a couple times, try to be a little bit fluent with it so it flows, because they're good at intimidating you, whether they stare you down or point at their watch that you're almost out of time. They do all kinds of tricks. And this school board did just that. They interrupted me about 10 seconds in because I didn't fully say my name or whatever. I'm sorry, that's not required. There's nowhere I can find in the Constitution or state law that says if I want to speak during an open public forum at a school board meeting that I have to fill out your 3x5 card with my name, address, phone number, and email. In fact, we learned that when people were doing that, they were getting doxxed, they were getting harassed, cars egged, houses toilet papered, etc. So when they asked my name, it threw me off a little bit, and I gave my first name, and then they said, "Well, no, we need your second name." No, you don't. And then I pulled a congressional statement that I'd heard this year watching some of the hearings, and I just said, "Please reset my time for your interruptions." And they didn't reset
Exactly.
it. A lot of raucous laughter from behind me from the other parents that thought it was great. So what happened is I got to the end of my, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes. Sometimes you get 5. And oh, beep, 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 beep. You're out of time. You're out of time. Your time is over. Well, I had about maybe 10 seconds left of what I wanted to say. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful, but I felt that I had every right in the world to express and ask for these grievances to be heard out. So I continued, and almost instantly they slammed their gavel, recessed their school board meeting, got up very rudely, and walked out into a private room behind where the school board was. Like Timmy the Tyrant Walls in the sandbox. Just
What
we're
a
not
gross
playing.
display of
We're not.
disrespect. I mean, that's
So,
just what's the word I'm looking for? It's worse than disrespect.
well,
Great
here's
arrogance.
here's to my point too. And arrogance is right. And here's to my point. And I wasn't prepared for that. I didn't think that was going to happen in a million years. I've never seen that in a school board meeting. But instantly, by the grace of God, gave me what to do. I turned around to the parents. I just flipped around with my little 10 seconds left. And I added this. I said, see, here's the problem. That's your school board. That's your Department of Education. Those are the people in charge of teaching and training your students, your children. And look what they're teaching them. To not be able to handle conflict, no conflict resolution. Let's just get up and walk out because we don't like what's being said.
Yeah.
And I pretty much ended my talk on that note. And that video alone had over 9,000 views on the internet within 72 hours. And I was called to, I believe, 3 major podcast interviews with people about, just how absolutely wrong that is. Now, it wasn't about me being rude. That wasn't my intent. I can be, but it wasn't. And I wasn't being rude when I was talking to them. In fact, I interjected a sense of humor in there a couple of times to try to lighten the mood. But that's just one of the things. We've had school boards that had big signage up, their big tag board on a tripod stand about You can't bring in a sign, you can't bring in a banner, you can't bring any literature. You can't applaud, which was really funny because that night, although that's one of their rules, they were giving an award to somebody on the football team or maybe a coach and a player. And of course, the whole school board stood up and applauded. And I'm like, that's against your rules. And now getting the police department to be at the school board meeting because Lord forbid a parent or three parents together might form something disorderly and question, Lord forbid, what you're doing or saying in our school district. And now they sick the police on you. But they had this big thing and all these, I mean, they must have had 10 or 12 bullet points. And I'll have to send this to you so that you have it in the NATF. But we created our own, had it professionally printed, heavy duty laminated, and came into a school board meeting and and this is probably going a little bit far, but sometimes, in my opinion, dramatic moments cause for.
There's times you need to be bold. You need to take bold action. All right.
I walked over to the corner and I told the deputy in advance. Now I only told him seconds in advance, so he didn't have a whole lot of time to respond. I said, I want you to know I'm going to tear up their sign in front of them and put a new sign up there. But if you'll just bear with me, you'll understand. And I said, it's not professionally printed. They didn't spend any money on it. They literally hand printed it with a Sharpie. And he said, all right, I'm not in charge of what you do or don't do, but if anything falls into illegalities and they push the issue, I got to do what I got to do. And I said, yep, you got to uphold that oath you took. Great, I'm on good standing. And I walked away and the meeting started and I went over and I grabbed their thing off the tripod and I walked it up front. I tore it in half and I laid it politely on the ground in front of them. And I said, here's your new rules. This is set by the parents that run the school district that elected you as our servants. So here's the new rules. We will start with a pledge of allegiance to the United States of America at every meeting. You will allow parents to speak. And I know that you have a business meeting. So if you want to limit it to 2 or 3 minutes per parent, here's the new rules. If there's not enough parents to fill that 15-minute slot or whatever time your school board allows, then a parent may have more than the 2-minute time limit until that 15 or 20 minutes of your meeting is used up. Because you are here for a meeting and it is reserved, and I understand that you need to keep things moving. But here's the caveat to that. At the end of your business meeting within the school board, you will reopen public comment to another 20 minutes if there are more people that want to speak. Oh, they didn't like it. They didn't like this at all, but we had our 10 or 12 bullet points in a row, and we cited state statutes after the ones that needed to. We cited U.S. codes after the ones we needed to, and we cited the United States Constitution and Declaration of Independence after our 10 bullet points, so that they as educators could go educate themselves that we were within our rights. And the deputy was almost applauding in the back of the room.
Wow. Fantastic. And yeah, you've got to be bold if you're going to go against the current, right? There's no other way. You have to be bold and take bold action. Otherwise, they're going to be in total control of the whole situation. You're going to conform to their norms and you're not going to accomplish anything.
So, and that's why the attendance piece is so important, Mark. I would not have been as bold, probably, but I knew I had 27 parents behind me at that particular meeting. We had met in advance of the school board meeting to make sure we had the numbers that whoever was speaking felt comfortable and had backup and had physical support, that there were people there in agreement with what I was saying. So attendance matters no matter if you're speaking or if you'll never speak, or if you want to give a hoorah or an I agree or an amen, or even if you want to say, I don't agree with that speaker.
Yeah. Absolutely important. You've actually served papers on one school board, I recall you telling me, and that was notice. Tell us about that situation.
We've actually served a different things, but we have used the notice and demand on a school board in notifying them that they weren't violating U.S. codes, amongst other things. And again, I'm not a numbers guy. You can help me out. We actually cited the U.S. code. I believe it was 18 something that says, hey, you have violated constitutional rights. We've warned you about it. We've told you about it. You continue to do it. We've threatened you with a claim for damages, a financial claim. And here it is. It's $250,000. But we took it a step further when you talk about being bold. This is one of those school districts that has a lot of parent involvement, and they were frustrated month after month after month. We got 23 different parents to fill out their own paperwork at $250,000 claim against each individual school board member. And then when we served it, it came out to like $5.5 million per school board member individually. And we literally served it live on TV during a school board meeting. And again, had to notify the deputy in the back of the room. During public comment, we are going to approach the school board. We're peaceful. There's no threat, but they are going to be served. And
Okay,
again,
let me interrupt for the benefit of our viewers. This notice and demand, what that is. The notices and demand is real simple. This is notice that you're in violation of these statutes, these regulations, whatever. You're in violation. The demand is that you fall into compliance, that you correct the errors, you provide remedy for any damage that you may have done, and get on the stick. Okay. And being that you are now fully informed, you cannot plead ignorance. And if you continue with these violations, we're attaching a certain dollar figure in damages for our fees for your continued intransigence. And so you now will willingly and intentionally and voluntarily be incurring these charges, because you're stepping outside your lawful authority, acting in your own personal capacity, and therefore you are assuming personal liability between you and me, and it ends up being a private contract in common law. So viewers, that's what that is, the notice and demand. So what happened when you served it? You served it on live TV in front of everybody. You served each and every board member sitting at the desk in their post. And what happened from there?
well, Mark, interestingly enough, none of them opened it and even looked at it. When we went to go serve it, they were under the belief that it was some sort of a petition in the community. And as I personally handed out the paperwork in the manila envelopes, and as I finished the last one, someone said, well, we'll read the survey after our meeting. And I turned around and said, oh, I'm sorry. Did you think that was a survey? Let me just correct you before you finish your meeting. You've been warned for month after month after month about this lawsuit, this claim for damages, not a lawsuit, I'm sorry, claim for damages. If you continued, and you continued, that's $250,000 a piece times 23 different parents. You've each just been legally served to the tune of $5.5 million a piece. Enjoy the rest of your meeting. And then I sat down and we all stayed. Oh, we had one woman went to a hospital literally during one school board member during one of these transactions has gone to the hospital with a panic attack or anxiety. And I don't laugh about that. I don't wish illness or ill will or harm to anybody, especially as a fire EMT. But it was interesting that they were so bold and so brazen and so callous and calculating and just high and mighty for so many months until the rubber met the road. We had another gentleman who's a little bit overweight up there, a big boy. You could see the sweat beads on his hairline or lack of, kind of like mine, from about the throw back. A woman had tapped me and said, look at so-and-so. He's going to go down too. Look at how he's sweating. And again, that's not the intent. But you know, Mark, they never opened those envelopes. The superintendent, who is not a school board member, by the way, the superintendent swooped them all up in her arms and said, I'll take these. So she had the school's board's attorney or the school's attorney write a letter saying that they would not be responding and that they were frivolous and baseless. You know, those three words they all know. I swear that's the only words they hear in law school. And we wrote back and said, maybe you're misinformed or don't understand the law, but this is not against the school board. This is against each individual acting as an individual, as a member of the school board. They each have their own independent vote on everything that comes up.
Yeah,
So we're
their
going,
individual capacity.
and then we said, so unless you can provide us with a certificate of representation that you
Yeah.
represent individual, you're to cease and desist from communicating with us about this issue at all. And we never heard another word, Mark. So we know we were right.
Okay.
So never heard another word from that attorney. Dropped off. And we do know that other school board members started contacting their attorneys and whatnot. And through a series of events, that's not the only school board that has been served some type of paperwork that finally made them go, oh, holy Toledo, um, this is real, or this could be real, or wait a minute, they sent an investigator, and this guy's been out around town videotaping us at a wedding and at the bar with no mask, and yet we're mandating that children have a mask on for 8 or 9 hours a day and on the school bus. I mean, it really makes people sit up and take a listen. But again, it's because we had the support. We had the parents in the room backing up whoever was speaking or whoever the representative of the group was. We had people in attendance. We went meeting after meeting after meeting, and that's what has to happen.
So, subsequent to the notice and demand, have they altered their behavior in any way that you've noticed, or?
Not in enough ways that everybody's happy with it. I'll say this: we're not going to get 100% compliance. We're not going to make everybody happy all the time. It's just not going to be that way. Did they change some things? Yes. Some of the things they changed were to try to shut down parents speaking in a public forum. One of the things one of the school boards did is public forum, and I think a city council in Rochester, Minnesota has done this as well. Public forum is held before the Pledge of Allegiance and before the start of the actual meeting. So there's no record of what's being said in public forum to reference back to. And because of it, they don't broadcast that portion of their meeting as well in some scenarios. So that was one of the changes they made to try to shut us up or silence us or not give us a voice. Some of them have changed how much time they give you to speak. Some of them have adopted that if there's additional time at the end of their window for their meeting, if there's additional time available, that other people could speak that maybe didn't have the opportunity to. We still don't find, and this is the big goal, so we still don't find a school board or city council or county board that will get back to you with answers to your questions for the most part. There's one or two, but they adopt this. You can't ask us any questions. You can't call us out by name. We don't answer any questions. A lot of them still have that mentality, and it is so wrong. So we did find a way to get around that this year. We have over 200 brand new school board members in the state of Minnesota that have never run for office again, that won their elections because they are who? Oh, that's right. They're those parents from those groups that decided, well, what does it take to run for school board? Maybe I have an interest. And we launched those campaigns, and those parent groups supported the parents that were running. Sometimes they did it as a team, Mark. Sometimes we found 4 candidates within the school parent group, and all 4 ran as a whole. They ran as a team, or 3 ran as a team. Their signs were all together with all 3 names on it. So it was very evident, obvious, that we were coming at the school boards and the city councils to replace those that just don't understand they're elected servants of the people. And in a large, sweeping way in Minnesota, if we have failed in other elections, we were definitely successful in a lot of our school boards and city council in that measure.
Well, that's a huge success. So the team concept, if I get it right, is that the 3 or 4 or however many candidates who are running will actually all have the same campaign. Their names would be included in the same campaign activities, the banners, the promos, the whatever.
Exactly.
And so the voters would just maybe end up voting for one or more or all of them, but
Correct.
they combine their campaign resources into one. And yeah, that's cool. I like that. Because
This is the big reason that you have to combine. Because who's got the money for $5 yard signs and a
yeah,
banner? I mean, they walked in parade together. They walked in the parades together. They did the banners together. when there was a candidate debate, it was really easy because three of them rode together anyway. Or a presentation on what your thoughts, values, and viewpoints were, and it was largely successful across the state.
Yeah, that's a great concept. I love that. And so there was 200 new school board members or
Yeah,
200
there's
candidates?
200. No, there's over 200 new school board members that have never held public office before in the state of Minnesota because of this type of action.
Yeah, that's exactly what we need.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it means there's an awakening.
yeah,
We can identify there's truly an awakening.
wow. Well, and we just need to continue that and get decent people, on these boards. But
That's best. We didn't do anything this year except made them aware that we're paying attention, and that only happened because of the COVID accident. Where accidentally kids were sitting at the kitchen table doing homework on their laptop, and mom and dad are walking through going, "What did that teacher just say to you? Or what are they asking you to do?" That's what really, it's their own game plan kind of backfired because
yeah, yeah.
we became going on, and Mama Bear and Papa Bear and even Grandpa and Grandma Bear came out in force.
Well, and
But we
that's what
can't.
we need.
Yeah, we can't.
Like you said, the school board thinks they own the children, that they know better what to teach them, and than the parents do, and that definitely has to change. So, and that's only going to change if parents get involved and others in the community, like yourself. I mean, like we said early on, that this affects our entire society. So, really, everyone needs to be involved in this. So,
Mark, let me give you a today what we call a bolo. It's be on the lookout. It's a law enforcement term, as you know, from something that you need to watch for. And when we send out texts or emails about something that's happening, we put bolo at the top. Today, I just had messaged Lisa Hanson in Albert Lee, because she's very active with school boards and school groups, that there is a new policy being proposed, of course, at the State Department of Education. It's 570 something, I think. And I got it today, and it's 23 pages long, telling a school district, school board, school administration how to enact a new policy for Student Privacy Act. Now think about that. The student's privacy. Would you have any guess what that policy is about or who it's against?
sure, yeah, keep the kids' information private from the parents.
1,000%. So if little Johnny or little Jill wants to go into the counselor, and Jill wants to become Johnny, or Johnny wants to become Jill, or God forbid other problems, maybe they're admitting to and or looking for help with a drug or an alcohol or a sex problem or an assault or whatever. Now there's a policy being suggested in the state of Minnesota that you honor the student's right to privacy, and you are not allowed to disclose or discuss that to a parent. And to that, I and my conservative patriot groups here say this: over your last election, because we'll make sure that was the last election you'll win.
Yeah.
Over my, we're, if you think we sat down for anything, that's not the hill that they want to claim as their last battle or the sword they want to fall on, because we have some pretty organized, good groups up here, and the word will be out to no less than 75,000 people by 5 o'clock tonight.
Well, the ultimate solution is just pull your kids the hell out of public school, and can we create alternatives? That's the ultimate solution. That's what a lot of people are doing. And
there's a lot, follow a whole lot of the homeschooling and charter schooling, but the movement here, the activity on those pages is astronomically high.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the way to beat these guys, is just to starve them into non-existence.
Mark, I will share with you, you asked about some of the successes and some of the things going on. Another thing with these school boards is we've seen that superintendents are getting reference letters from the school board when the school board was not happy with what was going on, or they tried to use that superintendent as a scapegoat to everything that was being done. But we've seen these parent groups contact parent groups 200-300 miles or even states away and say, hey, I understand that one of your final candidates is so and so. He's our superintendent right now. You need to go to this Facebook page or read these newspaper articles or watch these videos on YouTube about how he runs or tries to run a school board. So we've had superintendents that were finalists for really good jobs, and we have shut them down, as it should be, to that promotion. Now, there's some dangers with that. Does that mean they might be staying in the school district that you're in and you don't want them there? If they can't get a job somewhere else, maybe they're staying there.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you do have to think about. You also have to think about there's a possibility you could get somebody worse than what you have. That's scary, but you do have to consider that. Can that superintendent be brought into, I don't want to use the word conformity, but can you bring them to a place where there's a little more cohesiveness and working together? So there's that's a fear, but you have that ability. We've had school superintendents quit in the middle of the year this year because of the pressures we've put on them. Again, that's not a feather in my bald head, but maybe it was. And again,
Well, it shows
Minnesota
that your actions have impact and that you're getting results. I mean, there are results.
There are. And that's what we need to get better at tracking, because we're not really that good at it. But we need to track our results so that we can show them. We can't think that we're going to go after the big win right away, just like us thinking that, we can get Governor Walz out, although I think we probably did by the numbers. But, you have to start local. You've got to start on small steps of what's wrong, even if it is local. So, is it a school board issue? Let's start there. Is it something we can open a door and have some dialogue, or are they totally closed to any thoughts or ideas about it? Do we need to turn up the heat? Do we need to change an approach? But again, the 2023 year of a lot of these groups, that's one of the things we've all said is we need to better track and share our successes and our methods.
Well, one of those things is shining a big light on that so that the local community knows what's going on, even if they're not attending the meetings every time. Right. Yeah. And that's one of the things we want to do with NATF is to train people how to make a proper report of what's going on, know what the limitations are, understand the public meeting rules and these kind of things, so they can draw up a list of grievances if they in fact have any, and then start recording these. We can make little videos like we're doing right here and put these videos out to the local community and show the community what's going on, right? And put the pressure on. And apparently, that has worked to some extent. These superintendents have resigned. One woman had a panic attack. Another guy was clearly flustered that you mentioned. And these things do have an impact. And each one of these is what I would call a success. Anytime you can have someone think twice about what they're doing, that's a success. All right. Stop them in their tracks and get them to think about what they're doing. Let them know that they're being watched, observed, monitored, tracked, that the public, the community sees what they're doing, and that they themselves are personally accountable if they continue to violate common sense and or the law. These things make a difference, and that's what we're trying to teach people in NATF.
Yeah, and Mark, you touched on it briefly, but this whole recording everything, record, document. The main scheme of media is not going to go report our counter activity. They're gonna label us as the domestic terrorists or whatever. They aren't going to say, oh well, there's a lot of parents really upset. They're just not gonna. They're gonna spin it how they want to spin it. They're gonna make you look how they want to make you look, And we've learned in Minnesota by using GoPros, and cell phones, and tablets, and digital voice recorders. We've just learned to record absolutely everything. We've even had to record interviews with the media because of the way they'll edit it down to make you look like you said something you didn't say. And then we'll have to broadcast and air our interview in its entirety next to theirs so that the general public can see, here's why these parents are upset. Here's what's really going on. Here's what's really being said in its entirety, in context.
Yeah.
Like Lisa Hansen had to do in court. The prosecutor doesn't get to show 2 minutes of a 10-minute video and then characterize somebody some way, because our courtroom laws say, oh no, you introduced the video, so now let's play the whole video. And that's what we have to do.
Uh-huh. Yep. These things are very important. It's a form of warfare, and people have to, sharpen up their skills, their observational skills, learn how to document these situations, what to do with the information once they have it, how to apply pressure, and not just from one single individual. This needs to really come from the community, and the community needs to come together behind this. And we are having an impact, and we can continue to have a greater impact with more people following, your example. So,
well, Mark, I hope that in one of the upcoming videos we can talk about some of the politics part aside from just a school board, but hopefully we can get into the impact that we had here in Minnesota this year about recruiting new people to your, what we call a BPOU, your basic political operation unit, attending caucus night, running for offices even within your BPOU, and how some of the conservative patriot movement really had an influence this year. Our state Republican convention was over 53% first time GOP folks this year.
yeah.
First time state convention. That's how big the movement was. And to be at that, you had to be an elected delegate to that convention. So we need to dive into that in the near future too, and talk about some of the successes and the ways to get some of the successes in your local area.
I will look forward to that. There's a lot we can do. People do not need to feel helpless and alone. So that's the good news. That's the takeaway. So why don't we wrap it up and end it there, Keith? Thank you so much for your initiative and your insights, your involvement, your commitment to the community.
Thank you I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So we'll look forward to expanding on this the next time around as we continue our video series. So thank you so much.